Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
Rananim, and welcome to another episode of Cobbs Corner. If this is your first time listening, then welcome, and to my returning listeners, welcome back. We'll be continuing our AFI's Top 100 review series with 2001: A Space Odyssey. 2001: A Space Odyssey is a 1968 sci-fi classic directed by Stanley Kubrick and co-written by Stanley Kubrick and Arthur C. Clarke. Introduction. After uncovering a mysterious artifact buried beneath the lunar surface, a spacecraft is sent to Jupiter to find its origins. A spacecraft manned by two men and the supercomputer HAL 9000. Storyline. 2001 is a story of evolution. Sometime in the distant past, someone or something nudged evolution by placing a monolith on Earth, presumably elsewhere throughout the universe as well. Evolution then enabled humankind to reach the moon's surface, where yet another monolith is found, one that signals the monolith placers that humankind has evolved that far. Now mankind, assisted by artificial intelligence such as HAL, or HAL, HAL, must dare to encounter the monolith placers. If successful, the next step in evolution, whatever it is, will be achieved. This storyline is provided to us via IMDb from Larry Cousins. Shout out to Larry Cousins. The movie, as I previously stated, is directed by Stanley Kubrick, written by Stanley Kubrick and science fiction writer Arthur C. Clarke, and it stars Keir Dullea, Gary Lockwood, and William Sylvester. As always, a huge spoiler warning is in full effect. For those of you who have not yet watched this movie, please exit this episode. You have been warned. And without any further ado, let's go to Cobbs Corner. So 2001: A Space Odyssey, this is a trip to our past future. The movie came out in 1968 and it takes place in the year 2001. So it was what was considered the future at that time. And the movie is broken up into like 4 parts, and I'll briefly go through each part of the movie. And the first part of the movie, the first 15, 20 minutes talks about it's the dawn of man. We see early apes and like different sort of groups of apes as they're like scavenging for food and they're kind of just they kind of just don't have any tools, don't have any real technology yet, and they're just scrounging for food and competing with other groups of apes over a watering hole, which is their only real like water source. And then all of a sudden they come across this giant pillar, this monolith, the aforementioned monolith, which was talked about in the storyline. And this monolith that has supposedly been placed there by extraterrestrial beings, and once they realize that it's safe to touch, essentially, then the apes begin to pretty much evolve, essentially. Like the first segment, it ends with one of the apes finding a dead like animal carcass, a bunch of not a carcass, a dead animal skeleton, and then finding these bones, and then like gets the idea of like, okay, we can use these bones to fight other clans, to kill animals for food, and we can use them to kind of build. And then in one of the best transition shots in all of film history, all right, we get like a transition shot of the ape taking one of the bones and like hitting and like breaking apart the skeleton. I think he throws the bone in the air, and then just as it's coming down, we transition to a satellite orbiting Earth. This is a nod to how essentially what Kubrick is trying to tell us with that transition is that humanity evolves like as a result of technology, as a result of and because of technology. Like technology has caused humanity to evolve, like from like an early civilization where we might have only had bones from other dead animals to use, and then that evolved into, shout out to any and all First Nations, members of any of the First Nations that are listening to Cobb's Corner. Salute to my indigenous, Native American, and Aboriginal brothers and sisters in the United States and around the world. I remember in school we studied Native Americans when I was in 5th grade, and how Native Americans, one of the earliest hunting tools that they had was the spear. Well, first it was the spear. Okay, like it was, bones, and then they evolved to the spear. There was a time when they used the spear, they had to like actually physically hold the spear and like throw it themselves. And then came the atlatl, which was the precursor to the bow and arrow. And, the bow and arrow was once the pinnacle of weapons technology that allowed the great Genghis Khan to rule from the Pacific to the Ukraine. Yes, I just quoted Iron Man, guys. But yeah, that's essentially how like it started with just that bone, but then over the course of millions of years of human evolution, it's like now at this point, 2001 AD, humanity has developed technology to the point where now we can visit other planets, now we can visit the moon. So Kubrick is essentially saying that humanity evolves because of technology. Technology causes human evolution. And we haven't even gotten through the first like half an hour of the movie. The second part of the movie does not have an official title card. It follows Dr. Haywood Floyd, played by William Sylvester, and it follows him as he is on a mission to the moon to uncover essentially like a monolith that is on the moon as well. So Hayward. Haywood. So Haywood, he is on this space station, not the International Space Station, I don't think, but like he's on like a Pan-American flight, I guess from Earth to the moon, but it only goes as far as this like Hilton, I guess, like space hotel or something. And the movie's very ahead of its time. We still, as of the recording of this podcast, it is now the year 2024. It's 2024, and as of now, you cannot fly commercially, not yet. Richard Branson, if you're listening, you cannot commercially fly from the Earth to the moon, not yet. And how perfect that this movie came out the year before the Apollo 11 moon landing. So again, movie's very ahead of its time. But I digress. And so Haywood, he reaches the space station, and then he's asked about, from a few of the other people that are on this station, they ask him about how apparently there's been an epidemic that's broken out on the moon, and he kind of dismisses them. He says, like, I'm not at the liberty to actually speak about what's going on the moon. And then, Haywood leaves, and then once he gets to the moon, he's in some sort of conference room, and he tells everyone, like, we need the utmost secrecy and security regarding what we're doing on the moon, on the lunar surface. You all have to adopt the cover story that there's an epidemic going around, and that's why nobody's heard from anybody on the moon for 10 days, and you have to kind of keep a tight lid on things up here. So So anyway, I think the segment ends with Haywood. He leads a team to the lunar surface. I guess another team, they've like dug around whatever this monolith thing is, and then Haywood and his team, they go over to the monolith, which is beneath the lunar like surface. They had to actually like dig underground and like excavate it. So now that it's been excavated, Haywood takes a photo of his team around the monolith, and this is another monolith that was presumably put there by extraterrestrial beings, and this is actually a nod to Arthur C. Clarke's short story, The Sentinel, about aliens. They like place these kind of probes or satellites on like other planets, and then once they're like activated, then that alerts the aliens that there's other intelligent life out there. So there's now this possible evidence of intelligent life on the moon. So they find this monolith, but then that part of the film ends with a loud noise, a very, very loud like beeping noise, and then we don't see or hear from Haywood or anybody on that mission again. We now are switching protagonists. We now switch to the Jupiter mission. The Jupiter mission, this third segment actually does have a title. The Jupiter mission, which follows Dr. Dave Bowman, played by Keir Dullea. Forgive me if I mispronounce any of these names. And Dr. Frank Poole, played by Gary Lockwood. Now, Dr. Bowman is using a HAL 9000, which is an artificial intelligence that is essentially running the ship. And with HAL is able to sort of communicate and use like human, words and able to understand the intricacies of like human social interaction and that sort of thing. And it's Dr. Bowman and Dr. Poole, and then the other three crew members are in hypersleep or hibernation. The other three crew members are in hibernation, so we don't really see the other three crew members, but there's 5 crew members, only 2 of which we actually see up and moving. Dr. Bowman, he finds that there's an error that Hal has made. He finds like there's an error in one of the like protocols or decisions that Hal has made, and Hal tries to reassure Bowman that him as a computer, there's no computer error, that it's almost always like human error and it's not the computer's fault. And so Bowman and Poole, they get into one of these pods, these like escape pods, and they are doing something outside of the ship, and I think Poole ultimately dies. He ultimately gets lost. I think his suit malfunctions or something, and he ends up kind of lost, and then Dr. Bowman, he goes out to save Dr. Poole, but then as he comes back, and he's asking Hal to open up the bay door to let him in, and Hal says, "I'm sorry, but I can't do that." Because apparently Hal, now although Hal could not hear them talking inside the pod, he was able to read their lips, and apparently the two of them, Doctors Bowman and Poole, planned on shutting Hal down, essentially, shutting him down and continuing their mission. So now that so upon this realization, Hal, he says, "I'm not going to let you in," and Hal actually cuts off the life support, cuts off the oxygen supply for the other 3 crew members. Actually, just kills the 3 crew members, and Dr. Bowman ends up having to force his way back onto the shuttle and going into the centralized like computer room, and he has to like systematically like reboot, like reset Hal erase his memories and like just reset him. He has to like go through and systematically destroy Hal, essentially. And Hal even says like, please don't do this, I'm afraid. And then he goes and says how like he has been functioning since January 12th, 1992, and his creator had taught him a song, and he starts singing the song Daisy, which I think is like a nursery rhyme. So as he's singing Daisy in like a very like slow and almost distorted voice, he's being, you know, slowly reset. And then, so then Dr. Bowman, you know, again, unfortunately Frank Poole has died, and Dr. Dave Bowman is now, he has forcibly taken charge of the mission, and he continues to fly onto Jupiter. I want to say sail. It's like he continues the mission, continues to fly the spaceship over to Jupiter to find the origin of the monolith. And he then, once he gets to Jupiter, there's our final segment. I think it's called like Jupiter, or like Jupiter and Beyond the Infinite. Yep, our last segment of the movie, Jupiter and Beyond the Infinite. We get a really, really trippy shot of Dr. Bowman as he either flies past Jupiter or flies into the monolith, and we get these really cool like colors, like really cool colors. It's almost like he's just kind of going through like hyperspace, or just going through like to the ends of the universe, and get a nice like back and forth shots of like Bowman's face in the cockpit, and then like what he sees. You get like kind of like a POV back and forth, and then he ends up in this like old room where there's, you know, a nice sort of like table and a nice bedroom, and we see him sort of as like, we see regular Dr. Bowman, regular Dave, as he finds like old Dave. And then he sees old Dave, who's just kind of like living his life. And then as old Dave goes and looks for the regular Dave, he ends up seeing, he doesn't end up finding regular Dave, and then he ends up seeing a really old Dave lying in bed. And then after seeing this, like the really old Dave lying in bed, who then the camera pans over to the really old Dave, he's looking at the monolith. And then the camera switches to now from the point of view of the monolith, and then we see this ball of energy with like an alien baby inside it. So this is kind of a nod to perhaps that regular Dave either became the monolith or he went inside the monolith. And then the last shot of the movie, we get the camera switches view, and we see, I guess, the baby traveled through the monolith, and now he's gone back to Earth. Now he's gone back to Earth, and we see this giant baby with like giant eyes as he pans towards the camera and almost kind of like looks at the camera. And right before we fade to black. And yeah, that's 2001, A Space Odyssey. So this movie has been reviewed and analyzed by many film critics over the last 50 plus years. This movie is officially 56 years old. Came out in 1968, so yeah, it's officially 56 years old. This movie deals with themes of evolution, themes of human discovery, themes of evolution, human discovery, themes of like technology as well, and like how trusting are we of technology. This theme comes up in a bunch of other movies, some maybe that came out before 2001: A Space Odyssey and a ton after. Still a theme to this day, particularly with artificial intelligence. But themes of technology and human evolution, and like, do humans evolve because of technology, or do we create technology? Yeah, like do humans evolve because of technology, or does technology evolve because of humans? Is human evolution independent of technology specifically? And I think Kubrick really hits home this theme, and we don't really get that much of a window, that much character development from the characters of Dr. Haywood or Dr. Bowman or Dr. Poole. But that's also kind of the point, is that like the movie's really about like space exploration and alien life and the technology. We get more out of that than we do the characters themselves, which was a conscious choice on Kubrick's part. Yeah, I think as far as like themes go, this movie definitely, like I said, the themes are exploration, discovery, and technology, I guess. Technology, extraterrestrial life, those sorts of things. Overall, I think this movie is a classic, for sure. For sure, 2001: A Space Odyssey is a classic. It is one of... I haven't really seen that many Kubrick films, unfortunately, but this movie is definitely a masterpiece, definitely one of his masterpieces. I have to go, and I'm hoping that at least one of his movies is on this list. I'm sure this is not the only Kubrick movie on the list, but you know, Stanley Kubrick with 2001: A Space Odyssey. I feel like maybe like last week when we did Star Wars, I think George Lucas probably took some elements of 2001: A Space Odyssey and put it into Star Wars. I think there's elements of 2001: A Space Odyssey and other space operas and other space exploration movies. So this movie definitely has left an undeniable impact on science fiction and on Hollywood at large. So highly recommend you guys check this out if you haven't already. But yeah. On to the trivia. Or on to 2001: A Space Odyssey Plus.
I can feel the blood creeping up from the heathens. Got will, got fight, got pride, got reason. If they wanna go eat, then you know I'm gon' feed them. If you're coming for me, hope you're ready for a demon. I got eyes in the back of my head, I'm seeing. Take me for granted and you know I'm leaving. I'ma take what's mine with the webs I'm weaving. I could take this crowd from seeing to believing. Got a taste for...
So, 2001: A Space Odyssey Plus. Awards. Stanley Kubrick, at the 1969 Academy Awards, Kubrick was nominated for Best Director. Both Stanley Kubrick and Arthur C. Clarke were nominated for Best Writing, Story and Screenplay, written directly for the screen. Anthony Masters, Harry Lang, and Ernest Archer were nominated for Best Art Direction, Set Decoration. And Stanley Kubrick won the Oscar for Best Effects, Special Visual Effects. Although Stanley Kubrick was not present at the award ceremony, presenters Diane Carroll and Burt Lancaster accepted the award on his behalf. Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Films. In 2019, 2001: A Space Odyssey won the Saturn Award for Best DVD/Blu-ray Classic Film Release, and in 2015 was nominated for Best DVD Blu-ray Collection. As a part of Stanley Kubrick the Masterpiece Collection, which was shared with Lolita, Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, A Clockwork Orange, Barry Lyndon, The Shining, Full Metal Jacket, and Eyes Wide Shut. I have seen Full Metal Jacket, so I have seen one other Kubrick film. In 2012, 2001: A Space Odyssey won Best DVD Collection. As part of Stanley Kubrick The Essential Collection, which was shared with Spartacus, Lolita, Doctor Strange, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, A Clockwork Orange, Barry Lyndon, The Shining, Full Metal Jacket, Eyes Wide Shut, and Stanley Kubrick: A Life in Pictures. In 2008, 2001: A Space Odyssey was nominated for Best DVD Collection as part of Stanley Kubrick Warner Home Video Director Series, shared with A Clockwork Orange, The Shining, Full Metal Jacket, and Eyes Wide Shut. On to the BAFTA Awards. 1969, Anthony Masters, Harry Lang, and Ernest Archer won the BAFTA for Best Art Direction. Jeffrey Unsworth won Best Cinematography. Stanley Kubrick was nominated for Best Film. Winston Ryder won Best Soundtrack. And Stanley Kubrick was nominated for the UN Award. Cinema Writers Circle Awards, Spain. In 1969, 2001: A Space Odyssey won Best Foreign Film, or Mejor Película Extranjera, UK/USA. Shout out to all my Spanish-speaking listeners, my listeners in, whether you're from Spain or Mexico, Puerto Rico, Cuba, wherever. Shout out to all my Spanish-speaking listeners in the U.S. and worldwide. The David D. Donatello Awards. Stanley Kubrick won Best Foreign Production for Miglior Produzione Straniera. I think that's Italian. Again, shout out to my listeners in Italy. The DGA, Directors Guild of America Awards 1969. Stanley Kubrick was nominated for Outstanding Directorial Achievement in Motion Pictures. Hugo Awards. Stanley Kubrick and Arthur C. Clarke won Best Dramatic Presentation. Kansas City Film Critics Circle Awards, 1968, 2001: A Space Odyssey won Best Film at the KCFCC Awards. And Kubrick also won Best Director. Laurel Awards, 2001: A Space Odyssey won Roadshow, won Golden Laurel. Roadshow. Okay. Moscow International Film Festival, 1969. Stanley Kubrick was nominated for Best Feature Film. Shout out to any of my Russian listeners, my listeners in Russia. What's up? National Border Review USA, 1969, 2001: A Space Odyssey was put on the list of top 10 films. It won the NBR Award for top 10 films. National Film Preservation Board, 1991, 2001: A Space Odyssey won National Film Registry. National Society of Film Critics Awards, the NSFC Awards, 1969. Gregory Unsworthy was nominated for Best Cinematography. Writers Guild of Great Britain, Stanley Kubrick and Arthur C. Clarke were nominated for Best British Original Screenplay. Kinema Junpo Awards. Stanley Kubrick was nominated for Best Foreign Language Film. The Jules Verne Awards, 2008. Stanley Kubrick won the Jules Verne Legendaire Award. Turkish Film Critics Association, SIYAD Awards, 1974. 2001: A Space Odyssey came in 8th place for Best Foreign Film. OFDA's, Online Film and Television Association, 2022. Aram Khachaturian, Georgi Ligeti, Johann Strauss, and Richard Strauss won the OFDA for score. Won the OFDA Film Hall of Fame for score in 2022. And in 1997, 2001: A Space Odyssey won the OFTA Film Hall of Fame for Motion Picture. Now onto the trivia. According to Douglas Trumbull, the total footage shot was some 200 times the final length of the film. Wow. Whew, that Stanley Kubrick was definitely a perfectionist. I've heard the rumors that he was doing shooting and reshooting and had 150 different copies of the same shot. So yeah, I guess the rumors were true. The movie was not a financial success at first. MGM was planning it back from theaters, but several theater owners persuaded them to keep showing the film. Many owners noticed increasing numbers of young adults attending the film. They were especially enthusiastic about watching the Stargate sequence under the influence of psychedelic drugs. This helped the film become a financial success. Man, I'm going to say it right here and now. Cobbs Corner. I would encourage all of you to stay away from all drugs. All right? Recreational or otherwise. Just stay away from them. Do not ever, watch this movie while you're on any sort of psychedelic drugs or anything, But, I guess that helped the performance of the movie. So, the initial idea for the device that would eventually become the black monolith involved a transparent screen which would show the Australopithecines, probably mispronounced that, how to use objects as tools and weapons. Sir Arthur C. Clarke later dismissed it as too naive. Also, the HAL 9000 computer started out as a mobile robot, just as Clarke fears that this view of artificial intelligence would become hopelessly outdated in the coming decades. The omnipresent red eye was conceived. Okay, that was definitely a good choice on the part of Arthur C. Clarke. As artificial intelligence is more kind of intangible, not as a tangible robot. Because yeah, his prediction was correct. I think, all these kind of. Now, I've seen Ex Machina, and I've probably seen other robot movies. Well, The Matrix, Terminator. It's the whole superpowered robot trope. It kind of just gets outdated. Avengers: Age of Ultron is another one. So having HAL be sort of an ambiguous, intangible program, I think that was the better choice. According to Sir Arthur C. Clarke, Stanley Kubrick wanted to get an insurance policy from Lloyd's of London to protect himself against losses in the event that extraterrestrial intelligence were discovered before the movie was released. Lloyd's refused. Carl Sagan commented in the mid-60s there was no search being performed for extraterrestrial intelligence, and the chances of accidentally stumbling on extraterrestrial intelligence in a few years period was extremely small. Lloyd's of London missed a good bet. Yeah, what are the odds you're actually going to find extraterrestrial life? We hadn't even been to the moon yet. So, there's no search for extraterrestrial life at that time. So, yeah, Lloyd's of London, you missed out on a huge payday. At the premiere screening, 241 people walked out of the theater, including Rock Hudson, who said, "Will someone tell me what the hell this is about?" Pardon the language. Sir Arthur C. Clarke once said, "If you understand 2001 completely, we failed. We wanted to raise far more questions than we answered." Clarke later expressed some concern that the film was too hard to follow and explained things more fully in the novelization and subsequent sequels. Right, I forget that there's the sequel, 2010, The Year We Made Contact. And I guess, well, they said sequel, so maybe there's more than one. I've attempted to watch this movie a couple times. I feel like every time I tried watching this movie, I always kind of fell asleep. This movie, it's a bit long. It's about 2.5 hours, so you kind of have to clear off your calendar and actually take some time to sit and watch this movie. It's a good movie. I liked it, but it was a bit hard to follow at times, and I am going to read the novelization of the book. I decided not to read the book first because of the fact that the book and the movie were written concurrently. Although Stanley Kubrick is not credited as an author on the book, he did help Arthur C. Clarke put together the novelization of the movie, and the two of them did work on the screenplay simultaneously, like at the same time. As the movie was in development, so was the novel. So, and plus the novel was released after the movie came out, so, I mean, I'll probably read the novel at some point. Maybe read the novel and then watch the movie again. But at the same time, I think kind of going into this one blind without the novelization, just, watch it offhand, off rip, go in with an open mind, and you're probably not going to understand everything, the first time you watch it, which is okay. There's a cameo. Vivian Kubrick, the daughter of Stanley Kubrick, plays Dr. Floyd's daughter. Classic directors putting their kids in their movies, their family members in their movies. All great directors do it. All right? These are not Nepo babies, all right? Not Nepo babies. Okay? But yeah, Vivian Kubrick, Stanley Kubrick's daughter, that's Dr. Floyd's daughter, okay? Cool. Director trademarks. Stanley Kubrick. Bathroom scene. David Bowman explores the bathroom next to his celestial bedroom after traveling through the Stargate. Okay. It's a Kubrick trademark, along with the zoom, as Dr. Floyd reads the zero-G toilet instructions. I see, like the zoom in and out. Yeah. Insanity, Hal's distortion from lying. Hal's inability to lie, essentially. First person shot. Hal's perspective is shown in many shots. Yes, it is. Yes, there are many shots that are shot from Hal's perspective because they're in the formation of the circle, the red circle that Hal sees out of. Denial. Hal refuses to open the pod bay doors for Dave. All of these are trademarks of Stanley Kubrick. I cannot wait to watch and review more of his movies. On to some goofs. In continuity, the scene where Dr. Floyd talks with Russian scientists in the space station is shot from two angles. One of the seated women has her legs crossed in all the shots from one angle and uncrossed in all the shots from the other angle. Wow. Well, they probably forgot about the blocking. It happens. As Dave Bowman climbs into Hal's logic center to shut him off, the seal on his suit's left hand is broken and the glove separates from the suit due to the swing. The glove is reattached once he enters the logic center. Well, he probably should have duct taped that sucker on, should have duct taped that glove on, like they did in F9 when they went to space. In the Pan Am lunar shuttle, we see the Clavis moon base approach through the viewing window of the pilot's cockpit in a view like an airplane approach. In the next shot, we see the exterior of the craft, and the cockpit is shown pointing straight up towards the black sky, and it lands on the landing gear beneath the craft. It would be impossible for the pilots to view the Clavis approach from the cockpit if landing with reverse thrust engines. All they would see is the sky straight above, and it would be relatively still from their point of view. This is all very, very true. This is very, very true. You gotta know like the angles and like the points of view of the different shots, and yeah. So, who's the physicist that worked on this movie? Who's the science guy? That's what we need to yell at. The Bone Moon Watcher uses there's a typo in here. The bone moon watcher uses to beat the enemy ape is a femur, upper leg bone, as indicated by the sideways projecting arm with a ball at the end. However, the bone shown rotating in the air is a tibia, main bone of the lower leg, as indicated by its blunt ends. Shout out to my biologists that are listening, any biology teachers that are listening to Cobb's Corner, any anatomy and physiology teachers. I don't really know what you call somebody who studies animatologists, physiologists. Yeah, big shout out to all of you. I greatly enjoyed anatomy and physiology in high school. Loved it. Fun class. During Dr. Floyd's chat with the Soviet scientists aboard the space station, two of the women's coats draped over the backs of their chairs disappear, reappear, then disappear again. In one case, the coats appear to have fallen behind the chair. Okay, so clearly that scene, there's a lot going on from different perspectives. We got magical coats disappearing and reappearing. Yeah, that's what I would have asked if I was Dr. Floyd sitting there and be like, "What happened to your coats? Like a minute ago, they were on the back of your chair. Where'd they go?" Factual errors. The sun in space is pure white, not orange or yellow. It's only the atmosphere of the Earth that makes it appear orange/yellow. This is true. This is very, very true. Shout out to the astrophysicists, the aerospace engineers. I hope to be joining you, aerospace engineers that are listening. Anybody at NASA listening to Cobb's Corner, big salute to all of you. At about 1 hour on the hibernating crew member control board, hypothalamus stimulation is misspelled hyperthalamus stimulation. However, the word hypothalamus is spelled correctly below the button screen for emergency revival procedures under item 2 on the left. Okay, well, we need to contact the English department at NASA because, we misspelling words now. That can't be tolerated. I'm sorry. You can't launch rockets anymore. Whoever put hypothalamus. No. You're talking about like a whole gland that nobody's heard of. The hypothalamus. Again, biologists, feel free to have at it in the comments below. Does the hypothalamus exist? I don't remember that from anatomy and physiology, so I'm actually asking. Hypothalamus. In various scenes that take place on the moon, the Earth is depicted in the background. The Earth is always depicted as appearing far larger than it actually appears in reality. Even before the Apollo 8 Earth rising pictures from December 1968, it would have been possible to determine the correct perspective with relatively straightforward mathematical calculations. This is all very, very true. It's very, very true. Yeah, the perception of the size of the Earth is distorted. Something gets lost in translation. It could just be, Hollywood, but, On Earth, on each of the monolith's first 2 appearances, the upward camera shot shows the sun/moon or the sun-moon or sun-earth in line, artistically above the surface. In both cases, however, it's early morning on Earth or the moon, and the sun should actually be on the horizon. Again, this is a very big factual error on Kubrick's part. In many scenes on board spacecraft, red lit buttons, sometimes blinking, are used for what appears to be routine status displays. Since before the 1960s, yellow and red have been reserved for caution and warning condition/ranges, respectively. For caution and warning /ranges, status and information lights are white and cyan, respectively. Okay, so maybe I guess Kubrick was trying to say like, oh, this is an alternate universe where we use red to show routine status displays, not caution or warning, so. Incorrectly regarded as goofs. When Bowman re-enters the ship, he is exposed to vacuum for no more than 10 seconds before operating the repressurization valve. Scientific evidence shows that this would indeed be survivable without grievous harm, notwithstanding the sensational depictions in other movies. Yeah, so yeah, if it's just 10 seconds, like, yeah, that's survivable. Wouldn't recommend it, of course, but, 10 seconds, as long as you're reaching for the repressurization valve, you're good. And a lot of it gets exaggerated in other movies. That said, sustained time in space, which is a vacuum, time in a vacuum where there's no oxygen, any longer than that, probably won't survive. When Haywood Floyd is talking to his daughter on the picture phone, she moves slightly out of frame but remains in the shot. Modern cameras can move around to follow a person. Stanley Kubrick and Arthur C. Clarke foresaw this. Yeah. They're visionaries. They're predicting FaceTime. They predicted like WhatsApp and FaceTime and Zoom. Yeah. The spinning pen on the clipper is not spinning around its center of mass. It's spinning around a point well outside its body, with which, no matter the mass distribution inside the pen, is impossible. This is because the pen is actually taped to a sheet of glass suspended in front of the camera, as mentioned elsewhere in this section. I did not pick up on that. The famous centrifuge area of Discovery provides simulated gravity for the crew. However, the pod bay does not rotate and is gravityless. Poole and Bowman appear to walk normally there because they are wearing the same grip shoes as in other scenes in gravityless parts of the ship. This is true. I actually picked up on that. When astronauts on the moon are shown walking toward the unearthed Sentinel, they are walking normally as if on Earth. The moon's gravity is 1/6 that of Earth. Hence, they should have appeared to bounce a bit when walking as was seen in the later Apollo moon landings. I picked up on that. That's very, very true. They're walking like as if they're on, Earth's gravity, 9.8 meters per second squared, but it's 1/6 of that. So yeah, they should have been bouncing a little bit, I'm telling you, if I ever go to the moon, I'm taking this podcast with me. We are recording Cobb's Corner from the moon. I'm gonna be recording the podcast in zero gravity. Gonna be bouncing up and down. Yeah. It's entirely possible that the moonwalk bounce may be required for any and all walking on the moon. However, the principal reason for the bounce was the rigidity of the suits when pressurized, which did not allow the astronauts to bend their knees sufficiently to take a more natural step. They quickly found that the lope they used was quite efficient and comfortable. The suits shown on 2001 were quite different and may have allowed the astronauts a more natural gait. G-A-I-T. Gait? Okay. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. The design of spacesuits, and yeah, it's evolved over time. Revealing some mistakes. To come up with a convincing effect for the floating pen in the shuttle sequence, Kubrick decided to simply use a pen that was taped to a sheet of glass suspended in front of the camera. In fact, the shuttle attendant can be seen to pull the pen off the glass when she takes hold of it. If you watch carefully around the upper left corner of the screen just before she catches the pen, you can see the glass briefly reflecting light as it rotates to give the floating effect to the pen. On the Blu-ray release, the sheet is clearly visible through most of the scene. Even swirl marks and what looks like a palm print can be seen. Wow. Well, I actually did not pick up on that at all. The plastic, or the piece of glass that the pen was on. Yeah. It's very, very clever on Kubrick's part. When Dave blows his way into the emergency hatch using the explosive bolts and pressure in the pod remains static. In reality, the pod would have gone tumbling into space. True. Right, zero gravity, and on top of that, the engine was off and everything. Yeah, I picked up on that. As the moon shuttle lands, it kicks up swirling clouds of dust. In the vacuum of space, the dust would shoot out straight, and with the real-life Apollo lunar modules. Also very true. Yeah. Creative liberties. On the space station, right after Dr. Floyd clears security and before he meets the Russians, he and another man are strolling along the curved floor of the station. Their body's orientation should be radial to the curvature of the floor, appearing to lean forward in the frame, but instead they are perpendicular to the orientation of the frame. They are walking downhill rather than walking along the bottom of the curved floor. Nice attention to detail. When the Earth Shuttle stewardess enters the passenger cabin and moves toward Haywood Floyd, she stumbles on the walkway. The nature of the misstep reveals that she is not weightless. Yeah. That's a mistake on the screenwriter's part, Arthur C. Clarke. Why does she stumble? Miscellaneous. When Dr. Floyd arrives at the moon base and checks into security, there is a panel which can be used to select your language. It includes choices such as Dutch and Japanese. However, the buttons are all labeled in English. The buttons should have been written in their own languages instead. This is true. This is true. Yep, because even usually when they ask for a language on drop-down menus, they always have that language written in the language, not in English. Yeah. When Dave, played by Keir Dullea, that names are not my forte, guys, opens the access hatch to grant him access to lobotomize Hal. He is supposedly wearing an airtight spacesuit. As his left hand moves past, the glove separates from the sleeve, revealing his bare wrist. We kind of already touched on this earlier in the trivia, but yeah, you gotta wrap some duct tape around that bad boy. In the BBC interview, Dave says that in hibernation, the heart only beats once a minute. However, when the life signs graphs of the astronauts in hibernation are shown, it's a regular heartbeat that's occurring, not a heart beating at once a minute. True. I noticed that. Yeah. That heart ain't beating once a minute. Yeah. When Dave takes out the pod to replace the antenna module, the platform holding the pod extends out of the ship. Briefly, stars are visible through the platform, then disappear. A minor compositing error. Place the antenna module. Okay. Dr. Stretyaneva's blue-gray clothing item comes and goes from the back of her chair, starting at 28 minutes, 19 seconds. Again, yeah, these, magical cloaks, these were Harry Potter cloaks. Shout out to the Harry Potter fans. Making you invisible and visible. Yeah. AV unsynchronized. During the intro to the BBC interview, when the announcer says, left on its half-billion-mile voyage toward Jupiter, the word Jupiter is clearly not what he is saying. It's possible this scene was shot during part of production when the destination of the Discovery was Saturn and not Jupiter and had to be redubbed later. Nice, nice. So I guess, yeah, had to be redubbed later on. So, yeah. Error in the script. Crew or equipment visible. At the beginning of the TMA-1 sequence, when Floyd and his party have descended into the excavation to examine Lockwood on the moon, the face of Stanley Kubrick present at the filming is seen for just a fraction of a second, reflected in the glass faceplate of Floyd's helmet. Kubrick. I wonder, did he do that on purpose? Because, you know, directors love to plop themselves in their movies from time to time. You know. Errors in geography. Earth should appear closer to the horizon at Clavis than at Tycho, not vice versa. This is true. Earth hangs in the sky near the horizon at Tycho in long shots of the monolith pit. But Tycho is a 43 degrees south latitude on the moon. Is at 43 degrees south latitude on the moon, so Earth would appear in the sky halfway between the horizon and zenith. Zenith, which is like what, like the apex of, it's like at 12 noon when the sun is directly overhead. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that term, zenith. The quadrupeds shown coexisting peacefully with the apes in the early scenes are tapirs. Tapirus bairdi. They live in tropics in Central America and Northwest South America. You'd never see them in Africa, outside of a zoo, nor in the very dry habitat shown in the film. But tapirs that are accustomed to humans can be quite docile, though obstinate. And they look exotic to most viewers, so they were a reasonable choice for the film. Yeah, to be honest, I mean, most American audiences, like, we don't know anything about, like, geography and, like, animals that are actually indigenous to Africa and which animals that aren't, you know? So, shout out to my mostly American audience. The moon changes phases several times, backwards and forwards, in the long shots during the film from the space station to Clavis base on the moon. That's not possible. From the well-lit lunar excavation site, one can clearly see Earth. In return, the Russians or their cosmonauts should have easily spotted the excavation site, so it cannot remain top secret for very long. It's very true. That's why I love IMDb. Plot holes. When the moon monolith, which has been buried for millions of years, is struck by sunlight, it transmits its message to Jupiter, notifying its creators that humans must have evolved to the point of space travel. But given that unfiltered sunlight on the moon is extremely destructive, even without knowing about the impending transmission, the humans probably would have built a structure around the excavation site to protect whatever they found from direct sunlight. That is true. When Hal kills the 3 hibernating astronauts, a display stating computer malfunction appears. Given the absolute confidence in the computer, it seems odd that the provision of such a display would be necessary on the ship. Yes, it's very, very true. You know, we cannot depend on technology entirely, folks. When Dave is moving through the ship to disconnect Hal, he passes through doors opened by electrical means to get to the room with Hal's memory modules. But Hal was aware that Dave was going to disconnect him and would have overridden the door opening controls, denying Dave access to the memory modules. Hal was aware that Dave was going to disconnect him. True. Maybe Hal wanted to be disconnected. Dun dun dun. If Dave had not asked Hal to rotate the pod back into position when he and Frank were discussing his disconnection, Hal would not have known about their plan. By way of the script, the only reason this was done was so that Hal could read their lips and find out. Right, yeah. David not asked Hal to rotate the pod. True, right, because then Hal saw them. Okay, cool. The epidemic story can be easily dismissed by anyone with a powerful telescope, such as the Russians. They can examine the area in question and easily spot the very well-lit moonlight site. In reality, telescopes were available by that year that would have been able to visually detect the monolith itself. True. That's probably the biggest plot hole in the movie. Character error. Bowman inhales deeply before attempting to re-enter the ship from the pod. Arthur C. Clarke in an interview later noted that this is incorrect. Bowman should have exhaled, as the vacuum of space would have damaged his lungs had he been full of air. True. Quotes. Dave Bowman. Open the pod bay door, please, Hal. Open the pod bay door, please, Hal. Hello, Hal? Do you read me? Hello, Hal? Do you read me? Do you read me, Hal? Do you read me, Hal? Hello, Hal? Do you read me? Hello, Hal? Do you read me? Do you read me, Hal? And then Hal finally says, affirmative, Dave, I read you. Open the pod bay doors, Hal. I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that. What's the problem? I think you know what the problem is just as well as I do. What are you talking about, Hal? This mission is too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it. I don't know what you're talking about, Hal. I know that you and Frank were planning to disconnect me, and I'm afraid that's something I cannot allow to happen. Where the hell did you get that idea, Hal? Dave, although you took very thorough precautions in the pod against my hearing you, I could see your lips move. All right, Hal, I'll go in through the emergency airlock. Without your space helmet, Dave, you're going to find that rather difficult. Hal, I won't argue with you anymore. Open the doors. Dave, this conversation can serve no purpose anymore. Goodbye. That's one of the most pivotal scenes in the movie. We got a user review. Tribute to one of the top 5 filmmakers of our time. 10 out of 10 stars. I write this review just after hearing of Stanley Kubrick's death. It's a great loss, and I write about 2001: A Space Odyssey because I feel it is the consummate Kubrick film, the one he will be most remembered for. It is a picture like no other, not only revolutionizing science fiction, but changing the way films are conceptualized. It was probably America's first art film, and has inspired the likes of George Lucas and countless other writers and directors. Aside from its visual greatness, the reason the film spawned so much discussion and analysis is because so many people have so many different interpretations of it. Kubrick and Arthur C. Clarke, his co-writer, had a vision, but we have never really found out what was going through their minds. Of course, the skinny on its message is how technology of the future will take over humanity and decide the course of our lives unless we are careful. 2001's ending is one of hope, a version of our rebirth through the Star Child's flight back to Earth. It is meaningless to many, but discerning filmgoers will understand. Although 2001 does not have the wicked dark humor of Dr. Strangelove or Clockwork Orange, or contain strong, eccentric characters that filled his earlier works like Paths of Glory or Spartacus, I still feel he would have liked to be remembered for this film. If anything, Hal will be his most memorable character, dangerous, murderous, and artificial. It was a half-decade in the making at a time when Hollywood was still churning out dull musicals and just waking up to the new wave of French and Italian cinema. Kubrick was a maverick director who made great films on his own terms, his own time, and for everyone else to marvel at. He will be missed. This review was written on March 7th, 1999 by Don 102 on IMDb. Overall, before I get into the IMDb rating, I would just kind of like to say, yes, I completely agree that Stanley Kubrick was a very visionary director, and that this is for sure one of his best films, and that he is remembered for 2001: A Space Odyssey, and yeah, I guess in a way this is a cautionary tale against over-reliance on technology. That it's one of caution, but again, it's also one of hope that humanity can maintain civilization, that we can find that middle ground between man and machine, between humanity and technology. We must be able to use our technology to our advantage instead of letting it use us, instead of letting it control us. Find that middle ground, find that happy medium. So, yeah. Overall, the IMDb rating for this movie is 8.3 out of 10 stars, and the Letterboxd score is 4.3 out of 5. The movie was released on May 12, 1968 in the United Kingdom. Countries of origin include the UK as well as the US. The movie officially has a Facebook page, and the movie is in English, Russian, and French. There are some scenes that are in Russian and others that were filmed in French. The primary language of the movie is English. The movie is also known as How the Solar System Was Won. Filming locations include Isle of Harris in the Western Isles in Scotland, United Kingdom, the alien planet Surface. Shout out to my listeners in Scotland. I am definitely going to the Isle of Harris. I'm booking my ticket today. Production companies were Metro-Goldwyn Mayer, MGM, and Stanley Kubrick Productions. The movie had an estimated budget of $12 million, and its gross domestic box office was about $60.5 million at the domestic box office. Its opening weekend, it made $202,759, and its gross worldwide was $66 million. Was over $66 million. So made about $60 million domestically, and then an additional $6 million abroad. So definitely a box office success for sure. Rotten Tomatoes, the tomato meter score is 92%, and it has an audience score of 89%. I'm kind of with the critics on, maybe I'm with the audience, 89%. I say that because the only real complaint I have about this movie is the pacing. Not even the runtime, but just the pacing in the middle, like in that in the third segment of the movie, it does get a little bit hard to follow and a little bit not confusing, but you just really got to dial in and pay attention, and almost kind of makes you think in a way. But pacing is my only real problem with this movie. Still a great movie though. Still a great movie. Critics' consensus: one of the most influential of all sci-fi films and one of the most controversial, Stanley Kubrick's 2001 is a delicate, poetic meditation on the ingenuity and folly of mankind. Where can you watch 2001: A Space Odyssey? Well, you can watch 2001: A Space Odyssey with a subscription on Max, rent it on Amazon Prime Video, Vudu, or Apple TV, and you can also buy it on Amazon Prime, Vudu, or Apple TV. So that is all for the episode's review of 2001: A Space Odyssey. If you liked what you heard today, then don't forget to give us a review wherever you're listening from, and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok to stay up to date on all things Cobbs Corner. All that information is in the show notes below. If you made it to the end of this episode, I greatly appreciate it. Be sure to turn on those post notifications so that you get notified when I post, and tune in to Talk Time with Morgan Cobbs on Sunday mornings at 8 a.m. True Standard Time, live on YouTube, available everywhere else the next day. I hope that you guys enjoyed your stay here at Cobbs Corner, your one-stop shop for all things TV, film, and pop culture. And as always, I will talk to all of you in the next episode. Peace.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.